Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home programme. I'm Lesley O'Toole. Before we are joined by our guest today, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a non-profit organisation that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programmes to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the Foundation has given over $7 million in COVID relief to more than 7,500 performers. If you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. Now, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce actor and writer Riz Ahmed and writer-director Aneil Karia of The Long Goodbye. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Firstly, many congratulations on your Academy Award nomination for Best Live Action Short. I know you were at the award nominees luncheon, Aneil, and this is not your first time on the merry-go-round, Riz. So is it safe to say you both feel like winners already because this film has already reached such a wide audience?
For sure, yeah. I feel personally that the response the film has had, how many people have seen it, has just been amazing. You know, we made this for very personal reasons to get a certain kind of feeling off our chest, you know, and to see how people have connected with it is, yes, kind of like you have to pinch yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Even before this nomination, which just has been an unbelievable feeling. You know, we were just so moved by the reaction to the film. Like Riz said, it came from quite a personal place. It's kind of an edgy feeling, kind of like churning something personal and I guess there's like a dangerousness feeling to it, churning it out like that. It's kind of, a kind of disorienting, kind of turbulent feeling, just like doing that and putting it out into the world. And the level of kind of love and it got and you know how it seemed to move people was the win, I suppose. So yeah, this is just another realm of
Absolutely.
Kind of.
Can you both talk about the film's gestation? Obviously, it's an offshoot, albeit quite a hybrid one, of your March 2020 album of the same name, Riz, which came out presciently enough right before the world went into lockdown. And you were both involved in acclaimed, award-winning, in fact, 2020 films. Aneil, Surge, you wrote and directed with Ben Whishaw. And Riz, you wrote, starred in and produced Mowgli. How did you both get from there to these incredible 12 minutes?
Well, a mutual friend of ours, Jan Demange, put us in touch. He's an amazing writer-director, and just thought that we'd get along. And I'd just come off the back of Mowgli and was feeling that hunger to continue to tell really personal stories, or at least stories that tapped into a very personal feeling. And I met Aneil and we just got along so well. And we just quickly landed on the idea of, rather than spending 2 years thinking about ideas and developing them, what if we just jumped in and just made something? What if we just tried to make something within the next month? We quickly started scrambling around for ideas. And of course, sometimes when you give yourself that short time limit, the most visceral, the most personal parts of your subconscious just, come to the surface. And we really egged each other on in a way and encouraged each other and gave each other confidence to go there, to go to quite a raw place. And that's, how you got the concept of this film. But of course, the execution of it, the way that Aneil elevated it with all these different flavors and feels, from comedy to musical to horror, that's all he's doing, really.
I mean, the film does incorporate so many different styles and tones, as you just said, understatement of the year. Did that happen organically, and what makes it work so well?
In terms of the tonal shifts and everything, I think that was what was most exciting about it. I mean, when you're discussing heavy when you're dealing with heavy kind of themes like the film does, I think there is a danger of a kind of earnestness creeping in, a kind of superiority, a kind of lecturing tone, which I was really, really, really keen to avoid. I wanted to tackle these kind of complex themes that kind of lived in both Riz and I's minds, but not in any kind of superior way where where we wanted to kind of educate or kind of punish or anything like this. I think the most useful way to approach any kind of difficult issue is to make it kind of, in filmmaking, is to make it experiential and first and foremost emotional, for you to kind of feel, for you to let the viewer feel something and not be kind of taught something, because who am I to kind of teach anyone, So I suppose those tonal shifts came from a desire to be as cinematic as we could and unexpected as we could, make it exciting as we could, a strange word when you're dealing with such kind of provocative themes, but it's true. And just to stray away from this, this kind of heavy kind of earnestness that left people, feeling sad or ashamed or part of a problem. So I think we wanted to make kind of high cinema, I suppose, and those shifts felt exciting. They were certainly the most daunting aspect of pulling it off, though, in a sense, those that, like we say, shifting from kind of naturalistic British portrait of a social realist portrait of a British family into something far more genre and heightened and musical was not something I was like taking lightly, and then shifting again into this poetic kind of realm, breaking the fourth wall, etc. They were. Let's just say I was concerned about executing those all the way up until we'd finished the film. That was definitely the challenge.
Which were the hardest scenes for you to film and play mentally and logistically? Because you filmed for only 2 days for starters, and not just any 2 days, right?
Yeah, that's right. For some stupid reason, we decided to shoot this film on the 2 shortest days of the year, which in England, we can't quite compete with Scandinavia or Siberia, but still in England, the 2 shortest days of the year are pretty short. You get about 6 hours of daylight. So for a film where we're using entirely available light, that was creating a rod for our own backs in a major way. We didn't have an enormous amount of time. There were lots and lots of challenges presenting themselves. I'll let Riz talk about that from a performance point of view, but to talk about some obvious ones, everything was quite challenging in a sense, because even though the first act is kind of quiet, intimate, low key in a sense, pulling off a kind of low key naturalism that feels genuinely authentic and real, is not straightforward. It's not. You have to kind of trust yourselves and each other to lean into kind of mundane, prosaic kind of a tone and kind of dialogue, which on the surface of it might not be kind of fizzing with wit or excitement, but it's what you need to do to create this kind of sense of a true family home. And then taking another example, when that violence spills out into the streets, you want it to feel like utter chaos, but of course calibrating and creating chaos on film is really, really hard. It's not like go nuts and we'll although you have to do a bit of that, but then you have to kind of craft that and everything. So I'll let Riz elaborate on performance, because that was a tough one. The actors had to go to some really challenging dark places there, that, you know, their family home is raided, and that was something we had to deal with in a really emotionally intelligent way.
Actually, sometimes having less time can be focus the mind a bit more, and you know, that kind of soliloquy at the end, that poetry piece, you know, we can only do it twice, and you can actually see the sun setting in the middle of the second take. So if you're wondering why it suddenly goes to nightfall, some people have kind of commented on the genius of this, you know, passage of time being, the sun was literally setting. We just had 2 takes on that. So it can actually help sometimes, I think, you know, it just makes everything feel more urgent, more real, more lived in. You can't do it again and again and again. Having said that, yes, it means you have to plan, and it made Aneil's job in some ways much harder, and our job in some ways harder, in some ways easier. You know, we were just living through the day in real time a bit.
I think the challenge for us, you know, me, the DOP, things like that, was creating this as 360 kind of all-consuming kind of environment as possible for the actors to work in. So, you know, we wanted first and foremost this to feel authentic, even when it shifts into a kind of heightened tonal space. So we wanted to be instinctive to we wanted the camera to be instinctive to the actors and not the other way around. So we wanted to create a home that they could live in. You know, it was lit. It was, you know, any room they could go into. If they decided they wanted to go and get something from that drawer, they could, etc. We didn't want to do this intricately blocked, please stay in that kind of quadrant of this room because we've lit that like a Caravaggio, you know. It was, we wanted to give them the freedom to live this inside this home, inside this family. We wanted that to be kind of the
It's unsurprising that some of the film would have been distressing to some of the performers, particularly kids like Leon, the child at the beginning. But I understand that there was a lot of, you know, genuine upset on the set and the actors hugging each other to make sure everybody was okay. Were you surprised by that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, genuine upset in the sense that this is the where the actors had to go to, you know, to access these kind of places. But yeah, one thing we wanted to do was, well, obviously, it's something we had to be very mindful of when casting the people who invade the home. You know, to just like we had a responsibility there to, you know, cast people who understood why we were making this film and what it meant. And I think what we made sure that everyone kind of spent time together, so they got familiar with the actual humans behind these horrible characters before we went into this show, which is actually the opposite of what you mentioned, Surge. Like on Surge, we found it interesting to not let certain characters that Ben was going to meet, not let the actors meet. If the character was going to meet them for the first time, you know, we kind of kept them apart and lent into that. And so that first take, you were getting this genuine kind of fresh energy to that first meeting. On something like this, that would have felt just reckless and irresponsible. So, you know, we had to kind of navigate all that. And yeah, you're right. You know, they were embracing after each take to kind of like close that horrible kind of fictionalized experience off each time, and then sort of reset, which was a beautiful thing.
Riz, you've also said that this experience has made you a better actor. Can you expand on that?
Well, just working with Aneil, really, you know, he just really kind of tries to get you to a really honest place. You know, some of the improv, for example, with the family sequences, you know, just really kind of, Aneil really kind of creates an environment where everyone can just kind of relax and trust him and trust each other and connect. In some ways, he really takes the pressure off you as a performer. And that, I think, was, something that I kind of kept with me, you know. that idea of, just trusting. And you can't, you don't always feel like that, but with Aneil I could. And so I try and hold on to that going forwards. I also feel like, just as I said, having a concentrated burst of time to work in that was a good experience, kind of kept us all on our toes. And finally, I would say that, just those kind of gear changes, that he created throughout this film, it just kind of forces you to continue to go to new places. And I'd say he's just so collaborative that you kind of feel like you leave, even after, doing this for a number of years, you just leave the set feeling like you've got a better understanding of the piece as a whole and how it's being made. It's just so open and collaborative. It makes you feel like, almost reminds me of kind of doing a play, on the stage, where it's like a company of you that are doing it together. So, I think it was that.
Well, you've already answered my next question, which was, what came out of the improvisation that particularly surprised and thrilled you? So I guess that sense.
Well, it was just that Aneil kept telling me to stop trying so hard to be clever or funny, and just said, listen, just talk, just day-to-day boring stuff. And it was a great lesson to me as a writer as well,
It's the ultimate tragedy of this story that, in a sense, it's intended as a dystopian future nightmare, and yet, as we all know, this is all too real in these times.
Yeah, I guess you make a piece like this, you don't want it to be relevant, you don't want it to feel timely, and yet at the same time, I feel that just the act of telling this story is a hopeful act, it is a defiant act, it's an attempt to connect and for people to share in a certain experience, which hopefully brings us all closer together at the end of it, I do believe that's the role of story. Stories can, show us the world as it is, for better and for worse. But if we can all look at that, if we can all go on that journey together, hopefully, we'll come out of it with a bit more empathy.
Yeah, I think there is probably some comfort in, boxing it up as a dystopian nightmare vision of a future, but of course, sadly, it lives in other realms, of reality as well. Not just in the dystopian nightmare realm, not just in the kind of abstract black and white past. It's like it lives in the here and now, sadly, and it also lives in the kind of subconscious of so many people. Even if it's not happening, per se to them, it's sadly living in the kind of recesses of their minds and their fears and things, and that's what Riz and I were trying to kind of tap into, I suppose.
So on that very theme, Riz, you recently said this is the nightmare that Aneil dug from the back of your brains. How has that nightmare changed or evolved for both of you over the course of making and, I guess, promoting and sharing this film?
Well, it feels like more people are having this kind of conversation, particularly in the context of Black Lives Matter. And, I think this film, we first made it just before all of that. So I feel like a lot of people are kind of having those conversations. And so I would like to say in some ways maybe we're moving forwards, but it always feels like we're moving backwards at the same time, at the moment, as the world becomes a scarier place and more unstable. Our role as storytellers is to just keep speaking the truth, I think, and insofar as we made this film, it's connected with people, and we're here talking to you about an Oscar nomination, that if people are willing to receive this kind of message in that way, then that does feel hopeful to me.
What about you, Aneil?
Yeah, it's interesting trying to kind of hone in on how the process of making the film has kind of changed one's relationship with fear and things. I think it has been, I think that has been an interesting journey. I think there is something so vital about the third act of that film, where Riz, breaks the fourth wall and we slip into that poetic realm, and Riz speaks to us. I think that will always be the most potent part of the film for me. Riz's words there are just so beautiful. They're his own words, and I think one of the most special things about Riz is how he's able to take really complicated themes and emotions that kind of are a confusing soup in most of our brains and distill them into, I was about to continue the soup metaphor and say consommé, but distill them into something something clear, something so clear and strong and powerful and controlled. I think that's what I love about that. And the reason I'm saying that is, in the context of the film, there is something cathartic about that ending. We go to a very dark, upsetting place, but then Riz manages to take back agency. And I sometimes end up saying take back control, which is a funny phrase because the current Tory government love using that phrase in a very, very different way. But yeah, Riz takes back the agency and he channels all that mess we all recognize of rage, anxiety, fear, kind of heartbreak, and hope and love and everything into something so poetic and powerful, I think. So in the context of that film, there is some catharsis, and in the context of the process of this entire journey the film's been on, I think there is actually genuinely some catharsis, actually, in how it's connected with people and how there is something powerful in the act of like vomiting out these like nightmares.
I know people always ask performers and filmmakers of films that resonate if they knew they were making something special at the time. I just want to read you a quote from your costume designer, Holly Rebecca, who said recently, "I'd worked with Aneil before and was familiar with his brilliant style and approach to filmmaking. Riz really brought the project to another level. His focus, his passion, his precision was addictive and very moving. I knew then we were making something quite special." I'm getting goosebumps just saying that. Did you both feel at the time that this really would reach an audience that you could never have imagined?
Genuinely not, to be honest. It's just too abstract. I mean, I love that Holly could kind of see that. I think I was just too
close to it.
Close, yeah. And but anyway, that's me, yeah.
I knew that Aneil would do something special with it. I think he always does, really always does. But I never knew whether people would end up passing it around and seeing it and we'd be here. How can you, I knew he'd make something really, powerful, but you can never guess if people see it. And, there are so many amazing films out there that don't get seen. And so we just feel very grateful, that somehow, the collective unconscious is kind of locked onto this story as one that connects with them right now,
Before we end, I must mention, Flea, you're the executive producer, Riz. This film's made Academy Award history with its nominations for Best Documentary, International Film and Animated Feature. And the films share obvious parallels in the sense of home and belonging. And I just wonder if we could conclude by asking you both what home means to you.
I love, it means so many different things now. I've got a young family now, so like, just even just in this basic sense, what I used to always call home where I grew up, and now I still do, but I also call it where I'm now. And I know I'm not tackling this in the right thematic way, this question yet, but it's so strange to think that this, little house we're in is my children's home, and what they will think of as home. It's very strange. I know you're talking more in a probably more slightly political sense. Yeah, I don't know. It's a really, really complicated question. It's a very important, great question. I don't quite understand what my relationship with home is. Working with Riz has been really interesting, a massive part of actually starting to genuinely explore that. I love my home. I love where I grew up. I've got so much love for it. I go around the world, and there is something that will never, ever, you know, I'll never have the same relationship as I do with my home country anywhere, and I love it, and I'm also, you know, enraged by it and disgusted by it, and you know what I mean. Like it's so messy, that relationship. So it's very important. But as you can see, I'm not quite sure how to articulate the answer perfectly.
Yeah, in a way, that's why we made this film, right?
Hmm.
It's an attempt to try and wrestle with those questions, and that final wrap at the end is basically asking that question. You know, where are you from? Where do you belong? And I guess it's like a journey, right? It's a journey towards just feeling however you can feel accepted. And what I'm kind of thinking more and more is that that's not an external environment, that's more of an internal state of mind. Don't get me wrong, you can feel very unwelcome externally in the world. That matters, that's a real thing. But more and more, I'm starting to think that, for me personally anyway, that the first step towards belonging is kind of self-love or self-acceptance. End on a very hippie note. There we go.
Yes. And you've also found a creative home with each other for sure, because you're going to be working together in the future, I believe.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, we're figuring out a feature film, so I hope that becomes a reality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much to you both. All the very best for the awards. On behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, process and craft with your fellow performers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lesley, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, appreciate it.